Hi, Gemini. Scorpio season for you. This season, you may feel more like yourself than you've felt in a while in terms of the regulation of your emotions, regulation of processing, the regulation of everything that's been going on. You may not feel fully like regulated, but for the most part, there will be a sense of freedom in who you are, because this is the weird month, right? This is the month where no matter what you're into, it's kind of accepted, or it has normally been like that, what everyone says about Scorpio season. But you have to recognize that there are parts of you, parts of how you used to act, parts of how you used to be that were brought up in Virgo season. That's where like some of the work had begun for you. Some of the work where, what I mean is in that internal work where you're good at making external changes. You're really good at picking up on something. Let's fix it. Let's do this. Let's do that. It's not the same thing internally for you. Not that that's something you don't do quickly, but sometimes that process just moves slower than you would like it to. And we could say that for all of the air signs for the most part, or even some earth signs, because there's when we're used to like getting something intellectually, when you're used to getting something so intellectually, it's so different than it being in your body, that action, that experience. Because when you learn it intellectually, then in your life, you'll be given opportunities to put that into play. And you've been putting that into play for a while, and it's like, maybe you're like, okay, well, where are my results? Where are my results? You've seen some, then you feel like, for some of you, you got into this hanged man place where that can become the Five of Cups when you don't recognize how important that process is. And I think it's important to talk to you a little bit about yogas. In yoga, when you study the practice of yoga and the philosophy of yoga, again, depending on how you do that, but I have been studying it for a long time, in the philosophy of it, and it's a constant question of yourself. Like, you may be in a certain part of your life, like a few years ago, even a few months ago, let's just say 5 months ago, even 5 years ago, where your body was capable of certain things, or it wanted to do certain things, and now you're finding that it's different. And it's like, it's not just about balance, it's just your body's asking for something different. And something in yoga is questioning, like, okay, are you comfortable with challenging yourself constantly? What if the challenge was to lay off yourself, was to pull back, to observe a little bit more, instead of just like, information, all this, all that. There's an absorbency, that consistent absorbency that needs to happen for something to process. And when it's about the internal, you need to constantly be like having some type of action-oriented thing in your life that keeps you accountable to the change that's happening inside of you. Sometimes things just click with when you're in alignment with the supportive environment, meaning your body first. When I talk about environment and ecosystem, it's your body first. It's where you live. Is it supportive to you? Where you live, what surrounds where you live, where you work, wherever you spend your time. That is what is constantly becoming your environment, your ecosystem, and that all comes and starts with how you project, how you use your insides, and how you deal with what's internal. So I know that's kind of a lot to expand upon in this short amount of time, but I just think I want you to think about that. And I think you know that to an extent, but this is actually going to be an exciting time to put it into play, because this month will show you the grievances, the deep grievances, or the deep parts of you that you're really okay with. You've become it's like just so you in the raw way that you are, but you've become okay with where heavy needs to be, because there's a place for it, or else there wouldn't be light. And that's what we say, like in the spiritual community, like the light and the dark and love and light. It's like, well, yeah, but you need to experience that darkness to even have faith in the light. Like, that's where people get tripped up. It's like, oh, love and, like, no, it's like, what would actually shed light upon this? And sometimes it's a deep truth. Sometimes it's a very hard thing to hear, and that becomes the light that you need, and certain things dissolve because that was the antidote, or that was the thing that canceled out the other thing. There's so many different ways I could put that in, but like metaphor, like think of any metaphor you can do. I know you can. You do that all the time. You're really good. You probably actually can think of a better one than I can. I wish I could like hear it from you. Whatever you have been stubborn about, when you take a step back and you're not so on top of it, certain disciplines in your life or certain areas where you just won't bend over, like you're not flexible about, okay? Let's just Scorpio season, okay? Where you won't bend backwards for. There are certain places in your life where being flexible is important. There's certain and there's nuances of it. And when you back off of the things that you're holding on tightly to right now and actually see them as a part of, let me just show you these cards because this makes so much sense. And you'll see it in the next part. After this part, we do the next part where I look at the cards, or I show you the cards and I read it. And sometimes even deeper insight comes out, just so you know, if you don't make it to the end of the videos. So when we look at these two cards, there's a whole world behind him being created, and he just is focused on these 4 pentacles. This guy is just looking at the fruits that have come out from the labor. Now imagine the 4 of Pentacles, these four of these pentacles being those pentacles. Instead of holding on too tightly, you actually allow yourself to put them in play with all those other pieces where you're not holding on so tightly. You learn to put them there. Maybe just stand 2 inches from them first. And again, this is just visualizing in your mind. And then you learn how to nurture them instead of control, or instead of holding on or watching it grow. It's like watching paint dry sometimes. And remember that when you're moving different parts, so if you think of the outer planets, they move slower in a different process than the closer planets. So Mercury being the closest planet, it moves the quickest. And that's why we have more retrogrades in Mercury. So when you move back into the outside planets, which keep the inside planets intact, when you move back, the outside planets, they take longer to go through the process. So when we change signs, that changes a lot. Again, like I didn't say it in this part. It's the spiral. So when you learn something and it connects with you, and that could be a lot of things, but when you learn something and it just really makes sense to you, that starts to spiral in every area of your life. In other people's too, it does it naturally, but for you, it's quick because as a mercurial sign and someone who just innately wants to change and grow for the most part, when it hits a deeper part of you, it's going to expand upon those deeper parts. It doesn't move as quickly. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not so superficial. And not that you're always superficial, that you're only superficial. It's just that you're hitting a nerve. You've hit a different place inside of you, where the last few months could have felt like a blur, even like the past few years. But there's this opening that's happening this month. There's a freedom that you have in not always going and learning where your challenge is to be, maybe in the Hanged Man, to allow Scorpio season to refine your amazing way of going, not only knowing when to take action and going after you want super intuitively, but the other side of you that can hold back because you know it's not the moment. You know it's not going to help things unless you're just trying to be, Scorpio season. And it's a time for you to like really take a look at where also 4 of Pentacles to the 7 of Pentacles is where that has worked for you. Where certain things you just like were, no, I'm not, this is what I want. This is what I know I want in certain, like, especially if it was work, could have been a relationship, could have been a house, like super physical things. This is what I want. I won't, like, that has also blossomed for you. So now if you give yourself, for some of you, just that chance to take a step back, you'll recognize that all of your cups are being filled, that it's all happening. So I want you to imagine, well, what if they were all filled right now? What would be there to do except for play or enjoy? Sometimes that is the work. Fool. Where do you need more enjoyment? Where needs more playtime? Where can that help you take your mind off of things that are like watching a plant grow or paint dry? I notice, and this is what I said to one of the signs last month, I forgot, but when I go away for a couple days and I come back, my plants grow so much, because I'm the most, besides them, I'm the only other living, growing thing here, right? So my energy takes up a lot of space. I'm the nurturer of these plants, right? When the mother walks away, or that person that's the nurturer walks away, it can give an opportunity for things in your subconscious or things my plants to grow. So whatever that metaphor can be for you. So it could be art, that could be a business, that could be many other things. You guys know this best. Okay, maybe not the best, but you know this so well that I think when we know something so well, when we have to get back to doing it, when we're reminded of it, and we're like, oh wow, like I was so good at that. But when you're fine-tuning other areas, like I was writing today, like you can have a full life where you love the person that you're with, you love your career, you love your children if you have children, you love traveling, you love living your life, you love having your hobbies, your relationships, your friends and family, but sometimes other parts need more attention at different times. Sometimes one kid needs more attention than the others. And sometimes those kids learn from the attention that you give this one. And it teaches them something that those ones needed an up-close lesson, where those ones needed a farther out perspective lesson. And then they could always switch at some point, right? So I know I'm making a lot of references, but I think for the most part, what you're realizing is that your human nature is never going to look some way or another to anybody else, including yourself. And being the most human of all of the signs, being the twins, being this opposition, the Fool and the Hangman this month, and learning that, I'm not saying that any of this is easy, so to speak. What I'm saying is that the fluidity that you can have this month with yourself, and the ability to really see solidly and clearly things as they are and things as you want them to be, or things as they really actually are. It's this reality check. And it's not a bad one either, but it may cause you to, pull back. And I think that's important in some ways. There's this like cool factor about you. Not that you're never cool, that's not what I'm saying. But there's this like even some of you might think like, what is cool to me? Like, what do I want to think is cool? Like, everything I do is cool. That's what I think, right? Everything you do is cool. I think everything I do is cool because why not? Like, it's what I do. It may not be cool to you. It may not be cool to the next person, but I enjoy being like nerdy in the ways I'm nerdy. So you're so naturally affluent to that this questioning certain things can make you wonder, like, okay, well, like, what's cool to me now? Like, if you want to use that, you don't have to use that word, but whatever word suits you. What you're going to notice is that the more things become good, the more that whatever emotional baggage you've had, especially come Sagittarius season, your opposition, come this season, you're going to feel lighter than maybe you have in a really long time. And that's due to the emotional weight that you're walking away from that you didn't know you've been processing for a long time. So some of you might even find a physical difference in your body, but a lot of you are going to feel a lightness that it's like, like I've felt this way a few times, where you just feel, and from different things, but meditation enough and yoga enough can make one feel this way too. But or just those magical moments in your life where nothing feels bad or wrong, or everything just is. And because of that, there's this weight, there's this lightness about life. And I think this is something that you haven't felt since you're a kid, or maybe you only feel around kids, or they get you because, like, being the third sign, it's the kid. I know I'm talking to you a lot, but I feel like I guess I had a lot to say to you. No other sign reading was this long so far, but I feel like I'm gonna have to do this with the last signs. That's why I kind of waited. That's my thought. You guys, Leo, Virgo, and Libra, are gonna get a lot of video vocal. It's not as, if you feel like this is negative or what I'm saying is like bad, it's not. It's just so you. And I think this is like, this month will show you like your archetype of yourself almost. It's that solid fluidity. And I know that's like a conundrum or whatever you want to call it, or ironic maybe. Sometimes I don't, whatever. But that's what I'm getting here. And it's only going to cause so many more like magical and great things to happen, but it's going to have you have to walk away from certain things that you've known from last year to walk away from. It also might be a Sagittarius may help you for some of you, and for some of you it could be maybe you're learning from them. I know, I just like, hold on. I don't know, by Sagittarius season, I think when we look at the cards, I'll show you and then we'll see it together and it'll come out. That's what I'm gathering. But the rollout of the physical, so the first part of the month is extremely, again, internal for the most part. When you find yourself around people, you really enjoy it, but you'll find that you don't want to just like do that a lot this month possibly. And by the rollout of Sagittarius season, you'll get a greater sense of peace and freedom in a way that you thought you've had, or you have had, or it's just for some of you, it's just another layer and a level of that. So it's pretty sick, honestly. I think this is amazing. So we're going to end that there. We'll go to the next part. All the information to work with me one-on-one is below. I love you, and we'll see you next month. Hi, Gemini. Okay, see the Fool and the Hangman, and then the Five of Cups. Well, that's you, not that you're someone who runs from things, not that you're someone who doesn't engage in things. I think more and more you become easy to understand what's happening in the moment during given situations. Now more than ever, there's a part of you, though, especially throughout the past couple months since Virgo season, that has learned that certain things are needing your energy and then certain things aren't. And you might feel like a constant pull one way and then another way, but there's one specific way that is lingering from your past. It has nothing to do with what you need to do now. It's just that comfortable part of you, that part of, maybe it's like a deeper habit for some of you that you have, and it's just the way you've always worked. And I read something interesting today. So for some of you, if snakes are a thing, they've been a thing for me recently, and just like appearing in like random places, well, nature, so it's not super random, but like to an extent, and then just symbolism of it. And it's like that renewal, and you're someone who is constantly being renewed in different ways because you love to take information, love to learn, love to keep going, but there's parts of you that have had to refine the slower moving aspects, because we all have those, especially for things that you've been doing and living, like certain habits and you've been living out of for a long time, that affects your entire life. That affects your energy, what you focus on, how you see something. So if you look at the Fool and the Hangman, then you look down at the Four of Pentacles and the Seven of Pentacles, like it's like a similar thing here. they're not representing the same thing, but it's similar in the sense that the Four of Pentacles is someone holding on to and looking very closely, very detailed at something. Seven of Pentacles is just someone like acknowledging, this is one way you can interpret it, by the way, just acknowledging the fruits of their labor, being unattached to it because they're right in front of them, but admiring, being grateful. Or you can also see it as just looking at it as well, but there's a lesser attachment because there's a lesser holding on to it. He has mountains in the background, the other guy has a city in the background. So maybe there's, for some of you, it could be this needing a different perspective. So maybe some of you need to get out of the city and go to the mountains, or vice versa, which could be helpful. That was just random. But then we take the Five of Cups and then the 10. So it's like, 10 or 5 is half of 10. But also the cups. You'll notice sometimes that what I mean by that is you'll notice sometimes that when you find your groove between acting and then resting, you feel there's a sense of peace and fulfillment. There's this wisdom that you feel like you have at all times. And this month, again, coming back to yourself in a way that maybe you haven't felt, or just really living into, feeling into this version of yourself that has the capability to expand, to gain a greater perspective, to take a look at your life, because this is that fulfillment, the work that you've done. Now you're going to begin to see it change around you. But hold off on that quickness. Again, during Sagittarius season is when that's going to start to reveal itself. So that's next season. But this Venus in Sagittarius has been working on you immensely, because Venus in Sagittarius is seeing a different perspective, burning away things that aren't going to help you during the future. And it's also a great way to self-sabotage too. So when you're recognizing yourself in this position and feeling into the High Priestess, this Wheel of Fortune rolls out easy, and then you find it so attainable that if this is what you're going for, this is not so hard to walk away from anymore, because you have this very secured sense of, okay, I've really looked at these things that have been heavy, but now when I give it what it needs, it dissolves. Now when I recognize that, water puts out fire, very Scorpio season, there's something that changes. Like when you change your perspective, fire, and you act towards that, and again, acting looks different at different times, Fool and Hangman, you then need the water, right? You need the water to put it out. You need the water to settle it down, to solidify it. Again, that solid fluidity that you'll find this month through just all the different things that you have been focusing on, and they start to come together, and you start to understand why those things have been really important to you. And no matter it is what you do, you're going to do well at it and excel at it. And now there's just so much more of a depth to it and a comfortability to being in that secured sense of self and trusting that nature. There's forgiveness that's involved for some of you. Maybe just for yourself, for what you've needed to acknowledge about how you work, how you want to work, how when different fortuitous, maybe even some of you serendipitous events and things and opportunities roll out this month, it gives you not only courage and the strength. It's not like liquid courage. It's, even though it totally could be, so for some of you, be careful of that, now that I mention it. But there will be some of you, it's like that final piece that you needed. Because sometimes you need that final piece. I think air signs sometimes need that final intellectual piece of, but why really? And you can keep taking that far down, especially if you're like a 3-year-old. You just keep taking that. But you see the two sides of you this month more than ever. And you're going to learn how to play on their strengths if you allow this season to teach you, is essentially what I'm saying. Okay? By the end of the month, the broad, the wide will not feel so unattainable. Okay? All information to work with me is below, and I'll see you next month, Gemini.